Hey there, friends. Tracey, Bryant, Stuckey, Master NBPTS coach here, coming to you to talk about common mistakes or pitfalls that are made in Component 1. Component 1, which has the most point value for the National Board Certification process. So we don't want to end up in these low score ranges on the component that gives us the most points. So how do we stay out of that? Let me give you a few ideas here. All right. Sorry, there we go. Content knowledge gaps. So if you're a brand new teacher, maybe like only 2-3 years in the profession, or if you're a teacher that has not really retained a lot of the content knowledge because you've gone from maybe like high school down to elementary and now you're an elementary certificate, so you don't really know like the content knowledge as a seasoned teacher in that particular grade level or grade band would. It's going to be very important that you're going to study harder for what we call the multiple choice part of this test, which is worth the most in C1. And what we're seeing there is insufficient depth and subject matter expertise beyond basic teaching. So in my state, we take the praxis, and that's a content-based test where we're given scenarios and things like that, and we have to remember theorists, and I don't know what you use in your state, but it's similar to like the praxis exam. Maybe a little bit on steroids, maybe not. But I think studying by the praxis or studying from study.com or from Metrics, tests like that, candidates who've utilized those programs have done much better because they practice the content over and over and over again. There may be a limited understanding of how concepts connect across grade levels. So when you get to your constructed response part of this, which is 3 different constructed responses, again, each certificate area having different ones, you're going to need vertical alignment. So if your age band is from 3 years old to 8 years old, you're going to have to know from pre-K to 2nd grade. You've got to know content across those grade levels. That's what I mean by vertical alignment. You can't just say, well, I've taught 1st grade for 19 years and I don't know anything about 2nd grade or 3-year-old play. You have to learn it and be prepared for it for this test. And of course, you're not going to be doing play unless you're in EC Gen. Let me preface that. Everybody has a different 3 prompts and areas in which they're tested. And if you'd like to know more about that, I host live C1 workshops in January, February, and March. And those are out on my website. You're welcome to go over and sign up for them and really get lots more information about this so you can ground yourself in the knowledge more. Weak grasp of prerequisite knowledge needed for your current content. Inability to explain complex concepts in multiple ways. That will be necessary inside of the written parts of this, the constructed response. Poor understanding of common student misconceptions in the content area. So that's something I teach you to do is when you're creating your study guide, is to find some of the misconceptions that students have around particular topics that you know you're going to be, or areas of study you know you're going to be tested on. Oh goodness, I do this every time I go backwards. Let me go forward. Constructed response weaknesses. So rushing through answers without proper analysis. A lot of times people will just, rush. And what comes in our mind first is description. We just describe and we don't analyze. So you need to focus on analysis even in C1. Provide generic responses instead of content-specific explanations. So again, it's like the time is killing us, and so we just do things that are really vague. That's what we write, and that's not what we should be writing. We need to be very content specific. Again, if you've created your study guide, if you've studied in advance like you should, you're not going to have this problem. But oftentimes We hear from other people. It's just a test. Just go in there and see how you do. And whatever you don't do well, you can do it again. I personally don't coach that way. I coach you beginning with the end in mind to be ready for what's at the end. And all of these things I'm saying here to you are what is at the end. Missing key elements of prompts. So they have multi-part questions inside of your constructed response, and you must hit every element. You fail to use appropriate content specific vocabulary and technology. Do you notice a trend here? Content specific, because what is C1 testing us on? Our content knowledge. Limited ability to connect theory to classroom practice. You need to understand theories, depending on whatever the theories are for your certificate area. And theorists like Vygotsky, Piaget, I mean, those are ones that I have to understand in EC Gen. So who are your theorists that really matter for you? Time management issues are also sometimes a problem, like spending too much time on earlier questions. The earlier the questions, the more descriptive they might be. So the questions kind of lend themselves to go from the description down to the analysis and the reflection. So you want to just kind of move as quick as you can through them. But again, if you've built your study guide and practiced, you're not going to have that problem. Rushing through later responses, which are the ones where most of the evidence will probably be found. Incomplete responses due to running out of time. That's never good. That's heartbreaking. And insufficient time for you to go back and review the answers, to read over it and say, oh my gosh, did I say what I meant to say? That's going to be imperative too. And again, you'll be able to practice before if you get this C1, if you want to retake this C1. Well, you're going to have to build your study guide and practice like I'm telling you. So analysis problems, they could be huge in C1. And again, just depends on how you prepare for it. If you didn't prepare for it, you're going to be like, yeah, that's what I did right there. None of that. If you did prepare for it though, and you thought you really prepared well, but you didn't do very well, of these bullets, which one seems to like scream out that, ooh, maybe I didn't do that very well? Let's look at these. Surface level examination of student work samples. So they give you sometimes work samples to look at depending on your certificate area. Did you just do like the surface glance? Oh, that's a problem, that's a problem, that's a problem. Or did you deeply dive into that to diagnose at a deeper level? Failure to identify patterns in student understanding. So you might have looked at a document and said, I have no earthly idea. I mean, I don't know. So now you've got to start looking across your age band and area, and you've got to start saying, I'm not really good at finding patterns in their understanding. So I've got to learn to be more diagnostic. I've got to find some of these stimulus items from my peer teachers in my school that might teach that grade level and identify patterns with those teachers. Weak connections between evidence and instructional decisions. So you can't just say things and they're taken by the assessor. You've got to really have the connections there that they're going to be able to pull evidence from. Limited explanation of why certain teaching strategies would be effective. So you might give a teaching strategy, but you don't give the why, which again is your thinking out loud, the analysis of why I think this is going to be really important to move this child who's showing these deficiencies in this particular piece of work. And maybe the inability to diagnose those student misconceptions from the work samples. Again, you hear that. You've got to be able to look at these work samples, know what they know and what they don't know. What are their misconceptions? How are you going to deal with those misconceptions? Diagnose them, and then what will you do with them? And again, this is timed, so it's hard for some people to race against a clock. Writing and communication problems might be that the writing that you use there is unclear and disorganized. You might lack specific examples to support your claims. You might be saying this is the particular thing, but you don't give any example for it. So making claims without evidence. You might have a poor explanation of reasoning behind the instructional strategies that you want to put into a unit plan, let's say. So you say this is what I would use, but you don't give an explanation and a reasoning of why. That's really important for whatever it is they want you planning for. And this one is, grammar is not part of your rubric, but if it creates a clarity issue, then it's going to interfere with the assessor's understanding. So if there are too many grammar issues, it will cause clarity problems. Missing important details in prompts is a test-taking strategy failure. So they will ask for specific details in their prompts. And if you just skip so many of them, then that's not going to bode well for your score. You might fail to, or you might have failed to outline responses before you're writing. So in your mind, did you outline it? Or if they give you the scratch paper, were you able to scratch it out and write it down before you actually typed it in the computer? You might also have not used all the available information on the scenarios. They might have given you things and it just kind of, the time was just ticking and it went over your head. And you're like, oh my gosh, you couldn't like keep up with the pace and use all the available information. That's why working through those scenarios that the National Board gives you to practice with is very important, and to set your timer while you do it. And finally, misinterpreting what the questions are asking. You wouldn't believe how many candidates I hear from that come out of the assessment center going, I have no earthly idea what they were asking me to do. All I can do right now is pray. Now, I don't say that to make you all scared. I just say that to make you realize how important it is to prepare a study guide and to practice as if you are in that chair in front of that computer taking that test. Don't just go in there without any preparation. Make sure you visualized it first. So once again, you've got this. Over at Tracey Bryant Stuckey.com, you will find my live workshops for C1 coming up in January, February, March. Get your seat, because I limit those workshops so that people can ask questions. I think that's super important. And go over to the National Board website and go ahead and get your C1, download it, and look over it if you haven't even began this process yet. Or just come into the workshop and, let me help you unpack it as well. Do them both. Do one, do the other. Go watch my other videos on YouTube around C1. Just what I want you to know is just take action. Take action, because this is 40% of your score. So I want this to go well for you. And remember the two most important words, I and am, and anything that follows those words. I am smart. I am capable of scoring well on this exam. I am a good test taker. I am a good study guide maker. I am a good studier. What follows your I am? Look, I'll see you on this journey over in the C1 workshop if you're interested. You will do well because you will prepare. I hope this helped you guys. I hope to see you on the journey soon. Bye now.